If you've been going around the good old internet looking for the right podcast to fulfill your New York Yankees needs, well, I'll be the first to deliver the good news to you. You have found it. Here on Yapping Yankees with me, your host, Mike Scudero, you and I will be discussing the latest news, takes, and talk throughout the entire Yankee universe. Oh, and there may be some ranting on my behalf. Yeah. Anyway, what do you say we get to it? Let's get to yapping! Well, hello there, my fellow Yankee fans, and welcome to episode 251 of the Yapping Yankees podcast. As always, I am your host, Mike Scudero, your friendly neighborhood Yankee yapper with the best yap in all the land, here on March 9th of the year 2025, with another extra large order of the Yappuccino for ya. Why, thank you very much. Wow. It's March. One very good thing about today, being March 9th, is that the clocks actually went ahead an hour, so despite how late I have started recording this episode in the 7 o'clock hour, there is still a hint of sunlight out there, which just incomprehensibly boosts my mood because it reminds me that spring and warmer weather are both right around the corner.
Give me a hell yeah!
And apparently it reminds Stone Cold of that as well, so there's that. So, happy times ahead. Warmer weather, spring, and therefore the closer and deeper into that we get, the closer we also are to games that actually count. And yes, I have hit that time that I talk about every single year for the last 6 years, since I started this show back in 2019. I have reached that point where about a couple of weeks of exhibition games and spring training have come and gone, and it really just starts to run very stale on me, and I start to find myself missing games that actually have any value whatsoever, at least as far as scores and wins and losses. Now, I do obviously keep track of competitions for certain positions that may be taking place during the spring, or maybe some up-and-coming prospects that we've been hearing a lot about for years and seeing how they progress since maybe the last time we saw them, the prior spring, if we had seen them at all. So those are the main things that I really look at closely each and every spring training. When it comes to the big guys or the regulars, who are going to make the roster, really the only thing that matters is they get through it healthy and uninjured, unaffected, and just go into the regular season picking up where they left off last year, hopefully on a good note. That's really the mentality, at least for me, every spring training. Not everybody has that. Some people take it very seriously. They even watch the big regulars consistently and very seriously, and if they're slumping, they actually get really concerned for how they may start the year. I only believe that to a certain extent because it's games that don't count. Certain guys are working on things they otherwise would not work on in games that actually matter. There are a lot of different factors and circumstances that go into spring training games that really only have me take it so seriously, really hardly at all, especially when it comes to the regular guys who are going to make it to the roster and are going to play a significant role, hopefully, with the 26-man once the season actually begins. Problem is, with that being said, the big regulars, hopefully getting through unscathed and healthy, well, that seems to be going straight down the tubes, right down to the pits of hell for the Yankees with each passing day lately. One might even say hand-delivered in a handbasket. God, how I wish that was purely comedic, but I regret to inform, as if you don't already know yourselves, that is not in the least bit comedic, and it is entirely serious. We will get to every single injury that has continued to take place. This seems to be a major topic of discussion with every Yapping Yankees episode of late, at least as of this spring, when it comes to injuries, one after the other, and it's starting to get to a frightening point now. If it hasn't already surpassed that for some people, I guess it's just a matter of a point of view for each and every person. But we will get to every single one of those once we get to Yankees news, and there is definitely plenty of it. So, best grab on hold to something. because despite our optimism for the regular season only being about a couple of weeks away and just the general excitement that comes along with that, the very upsetting and discouraging pieces of news when it comes to injuries and how that very well could and likely will affect the upcoming season really just turns it into an emotional roller coaster, as if us Yankee fans don't already have enough of that on a regular basis. So that's just lovely, isn't it? But before we get to that, I just wanted to draw some attention to the last episode of Yapping Yankees right before we got into that. Obviously, the last episode a couple of weeks ago was episode 250, and I did receive a lot of positive feedback, as I usually always do for basically all Yapping Yankees episodes, which I cannot express my gratitude and appreciation to each and every one of you enough, like I always try to do. It really is about you guys. I mean, this show definitely is therapy for me, having this microphone in front of me, getting to spout off all my crap in regards to the Yankees, and partially on a personal basis as well. So thank you all for that, and I cannot express my gratitude enough. And also for your patience with me, because usually by now, once spring training has begun, in the prior 5 years before this one at least, because this is year 6 of the show, well, season number 7 that I'm covering, but year 6 as I started in 2019. But anyway, usually by now in spring training, I will have changed the bi-weekly off-season format back to the typical weekly format of Yapping Yankees, which is what it was for the entirety of its history, minus just last off-season and this off-season that just ended a few weeks ago. It's always been weekly, with the occasional week taken off in case anything's going on in my life or, whatever. If it's a weekend of a holiday, you get the idea. I would take an occasional week off here and there, but otherwise it was every week. Obviously, the show has gone on for a long time now. We are over 250 episodes now, which is surreal. I have a lot of listeners who even hit me up within the last couple of weeks after I released the 250th episode saying that I can't believe that it has been that many episodes for this many years already. And one person even said they remembered me covering the lockout back in 2020 like it was yesterday, in the midst of the virus and everything. And I said, yeah, it's just a testament to how surreal it is, how fast time goes, because that feels like yesterday to me too. But as I was saying before, I know that usually by now it would go back to being weekly, but I do have to thank you guys once more for your continued patience with me keeping it bi-weekly for now because of my studies with the Series 7 and just me pursuing my financial career within the next few months and all the intense work that's come with that. And also just some weeks lately, I've just wanted some Sundays to just mentally relax because, I still work a full-time job that I'm happy at, fortunately. I know a lot of people aren't lucky enough to say that, but very happy at my job. But it's also studying a lot of hours along with that, and I'm very active too physically, so there's that. Just a lot of different things, and spending time with my family as much as I can still, because that's important with balancing your life with all those different aspects. So it's just a lot's been going on, and I've been so busy, and that's why it's helped to keep this show bi-weekly, and honestly, even that's been a challenge sometimes. So I have strongly alluded to within the last few episodes not knowing what the immediate future of this show holds, and I'm still really kind of having that mindset, unfortunately. Just looking ahead, I mean, the rest of March, I'm finishing my textbook this week, finally, which is unbelievable to even say because that is a 600-page textbook, and I've finished it in just about 2 months or maybe even slightly less, which is really impressive because I'm not a good reader and I hate reading. It's just not something I enjoy doing, ever. So I'm thrilled to be wrapping that up and moving on to the next phase of studying, being online lectures and note-taking and all that, because that's really when retention and true learning takes place for me when it comes to studying anything. So that's good that that phase of the studying is wrapping up and I can move on to the next before ultimately taking my test in mid-May. But that's also going to draw a lot more of my attention because I'm going to be spending a lot more time while doing that and retaining all my information and whatnot. So my continued dedication towards studying, that's only going to get more intense week by week going forward all the way through to May. Well, it's gotten me thinking to the coming weeks, and next time I talk to you will probably be the weekend of March 22nd and 23rd, 2 weeks from now. And despite some big news that we're expecting in Yankee land within the next few days, but next weekend's just not looking like one where a show's going to work out. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. But for the rest of March, it should be fine. But then April, the studying is only going to get more and more and more. And I'm not sure how many episodes I'll be able to pop out for that. And then in May, like I said a couple of weeks ago in episode 250, the entire month of May, there will definitely be no episodes, as I said, because from May 1st through to the 15th, in that 2-week stretch leading up to my Series 7 exam, my first and hopefully only attempt, I'm going into complete and utter exile, like Master Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi after Order 66 type exile. And I'm just completely honing in on my studies and nothing else right up through to the exam, so I'm not taking any time to do any episodes in that time period, and I hope you guys can understand that, reasonably so. And then a few days after that, we're going on our trip to Japan through to the end of May, and then before you know it, it'll be June. It's just no time to do an episode in the entire month of May, and I don't know what April's going to hold. Maybe an episode or two in April. But I don't know, guys. The schedule is going to get a little hairy going forward. And any updates I have for you, like I always say, you can always stay tuned to my social media, particularly my Twitter, since that's where I'm most active as far as posting. But always stay tuned to my social media because that's where I'll have any updates for you. Whether it be in my personal life or with Yapping Yankees or anything else. At least anything else I'm willing to disclose and tell to the public. But anything in that regard, you can always stay tuned to my social medias. I always plug it. Facebook fan page, Mike Scudero NY. My Twitter is at Mike Scudero. Again, that's where I'm most likely to provide up-to-the-minute updates. It's where I'm most active as far as posting. And then my Instagram is Mike Scuds97. So any updates in regards to Yapping Yankees or anything else that I'm willing to make public at any given time, just follow me on those, and you're more than likely to see anything that I have to update, particularly when it comes to Yapping Yankees scheduling over the next couple of months, because it's getting hairy now. As I get ready to finish the textbook and continue on in the next phase, I'm seeing that, and I just can't promise even a remotely consistent schedule, which is very out of the ordinary for me because, again, especially for you long-timers out there, my OGs for Yapping Yankees, you guys are used to regular weekly content, and that's why after a little bit under 6 years exactly when it comes to the exact month that I started Yapping Yankees, I am already past 250 episodes because the consistency has been there. And not too many content creators, especially podcasters, a lot of them fall off here and there. No disrespect to them at all. They have their own lives too, like I'm experiencing right now with mine. It happens. But very few have been able to showcase the consistency that I have for over a half a decade now, and I do have to give myself some degree of a pat on the back for that, because it is an accomplishment, and I'm proud of myself for it. But things do change, of course, especially for people my age. I'm in my late 20s, and things are starting to take off now. And it is very weird for me, but for the first time, Yapping Yankees is experiencing some rough waters and inconsistent scheduling. But I just want to be as transparent with you as possible and provide you with as many updates as I can as time goes along so you guys can know what the deal is. I don't want to just not do an episode on a given weekend without you guys knowing anything, because you guys don't deserve that. You guys have stuck with me through years now, especially the ones who have been around since the beginning or maybe even near the beginning. You guys deserve to have transparency and up-to-the-minute updates. If anything goes wrong or if I have to put anything off, then I'll let you guys know about it always. So every single episode of late, as this continues on, I just want to keep on being honest with you guys and straight up and let you guys know what's happening with me in my life and how that affects Yapping Yankees so you guys can know what to expect. So I'll continue to do that as the weeks go along and continue to update you guys, whether it be on these episodes themselves or on my social media. So just keep your eyes peeled for those sorts of things, guys. I just want to keep you guys in the loop on all that. So that's the deal right now. Chances are you will get another episode, whether it is next Sunday or the following Sunday. That would be the 16th or the 23rd. If it is the week of the 23rd, that weekend, then I'm probably going to record on Saturday because I am going to an event on Sunday the 23rd. So I'll record on Saturday probably for it to be released on the 23rd. And after that, I'm not sure. I might do an episode the following weekend because obviously between that weekend and the weekend of the 30th is when opening day will have happened. And it really stinks that my life is getting crazy just at the time another regular season starting. The timing absolutely sucks. I'm well aware of that, believe me. But there's really little I can do about it, guys. There really is. So I'll do what I can. You definitely at least have my word on that much. But you'll probably get an episode the weekend after that because of opening day, and then after that, we'll just see for April. April is going to be a weird month, and then May is going to be one of the crazier months of my entire life. So we'll see what the deal is. June and beyond, I don't know. Probably going to be more consistent from that point forward, depending on what happens in my financial career as well. I'm not really sure, but my testing will have been done with as far as the Series 7, and my Japan trip will be done, and a lot of the things I have going on otherwise in the month of May, and there is a lot more, that'll all be done with. So maybe a little bit more calm after that. Maybe the storm will finally subside a bit. Storm of a lot of good, not necessarily bad, so that's fine. But we'll see. I'll keep you guys updated. As far as keeping updated, though, my God, is there a lot to stay updated on as far as injuries, for the love of God, when it comes to this team. And you know what? Not even to just the Yankees. Like I've said for years now, this is an epidemic being seen all around Major League Baseball. This is not even exclusive to the Yankees anymore, but it is so prevalent with the Yankees for so many years now in the recent past that you would feel like, as a Yankee fan, it is only with the Yankees, because it is just at such an absurd level. Now, last year, and I said this last episode too, I feel like the Yankees got a little bit of a break last year with the injuries. Of course, they still had them here and there. It's inevitable, and you can't be totally healthy the entire year. It's too long of a season for that, and too much crap happens, especially nowadays with baseball in general. But I felt like last year, when you compared at least to many of the years in the recent past within the last 5 to 10 years, last year was one of the more healthy seasons the Yankees had, and it was really a breath of fresh air. Now, the Yankees had other individual troubles in other areas, and they missed Garrett Cole for 3 months last year, and this and that, but they still managed to get the job done, whether it be doing what they had to do in any given moment or taking advantage of a weaker American League. But regardless, they found themselves in the World Series, which is something they hadn't done for the prior 15 years since their last title in 2009. So it still worked out okay last year, despite the generational embarrassment that took place at the very end of the road in 2024 that I need not repeat, nor do I want to repeat. But nonetheless, you can't help but feel like that if you do agree with my sentiment with that regarding 2024, you can't help but agree, at least if you have similar thinking to mine, that the Yankees might be paying for that in the karma department just a little bit here. To say the least. Right now, as we stand, most of this just as of this past week, mind you. I mean, a couple of these things were already happening in the last few weeks, even prior to the last episode a couple of weeks ago. But a couple of these things that are just absolute gut punches, just knocking the wind out of you, metaphorically, if you're a Yankee fan. We get news even more so that Luis Gil, he's now gone probably for the entire first half. And if not, then maybe at least almost the entire first half. Long term, that's my point. You have the Yankees ace now staring down the Tommy John barrel. Now, last year, like I just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, he had some elbow concerns at the start of the year, and it saw him missing basically the first half of the season. They were lucky that they were able to tiptoe around Tommy John last year, still get him back for the second half, and have him performing, for the most part, very well for the rest of the way out, instead of just having a temporary lapse of judgment in forgetting how to cover first base in the World Series. Other than that, the Yankees were very fortunate with the second half that they got out of Garrett Cole, and the fact that they were even able to have a second half of Garrett Cole to begin with. He unfortunately does not seem to be sharing in that same luck a year later, almost to the exact time, when his elbow problems reared its ugly head around this time last year. Now, you hear of him having gotten tests, and Brian Cashman says he's prepared for the worst. Cole says he's nervous. They should be ripping off the Band-Aid within the next couple of days, probably either tomorrow or Tuesday, the 10th or the 11th. Or maybe even tonight. Who knows if they would like to do that? maybe even a couple of minutes after I upload my show, because we just know as content creators, that's the way it goes sometimes. That's what happened with the Juan Soto signing after all. So just a little self-deprecation there. But anyway, maybe a couple of minutes after I choose to upload Yapping Yankees, they'll just unveil the news for his test results. But regardless, Cole doesn't sound optimistic about it. The Yankees, in the form of Cashman, and take that as you will, do not sound optimistic about it. So at this point, it's just a sense of overwhelming dread at what feels like an inevitable report that the Yankees are actually going to have to navigate an entire year without one of the captains steering the ship in the ace, Garrett Cole. Now, a lot of people have their own schools of thought on this, like, oh, maybe this was the reason why certain things happened with all the contract crap earlier in the offseason, how it just sort of went back to the way it was before and nothing changed, and it was really baffling how that happened, because maybe Cole didn't want anyone seeing his medicals, maybe he had underlying concerns about his elbow, especially because they already had worries about that last year, and oh my God, the speculation is just exhausting, and that's why I don't take part in a lot of it, because I don't have the time or the energy for it, especially nowadays. So, regardless, I just focus on the overwhelming and the potentially highly unfortunate, bone-crushing reality that the Yankees will have to navigate a 2025 season without Garrett Cole whatsoever. So you have him, you have Luis Gil, missing give or take the entire first half of the year. So that is two unbelievably important starting rotation arms in a rotation that looked just stellar on paper heading into spring training, especially after having picked up Max Fried in the offseason. Now two major blows to it, and long-term blows. You have the baffling nature of the Giancarlo Stanton situation with his elbow seemingly getting worse and worse with each and every report that comes out day by day, whether it's the Yankees front office talking about it or Stanton himself. You have, and not that I have an issue with this strictly from a production standpoint, I don't want anyone to be injured, of course, I make that very clear when I say things like this, but DJ LeMahieu with his calf problem. You have him with injury issues as well. You've heard throughout camp, even though as of right now it doesn't seem to be much of an issue, that Clark Schmidt has had, and I quote from our brilliant manager himself, a cranky back. So they've been keeping an eye on him as well. Even though, again, doesn't seem to be much pessimism on that front. But last thing the Yankees need is something to happen with him as well, because then you're talking about an already highly damaged rotation taking even more damage. Right now, it still even just seems like it's Fried, Rodon, Schmidt, Stroman, and then somebody else is going to have to step up. Will Warren, somebody else. It's getting hairy, guys. It's getting really weird here. And then out in the bullpen, as excited as I am to get him back, obviously Jonathan Loaisiga, part of that three-headed monster in the back of that bullpen. Well, at the very beginning, he's still not going to be around because he's still recovering from when he was majorly injured last year, missed basically the entire year, more or less. And he's going to miss the first bunch of weeks as well. So, and we knew that, but when things were still okay on paper, you were willing to put up with little losses like that because you say, well, they can weather that storm for a little bit, missing a couple of names here and there, as long as the rest of the mainly important factors of the team don't also get hurt, which then starts to fracture the very foundation of this team, which is already trying to do their best to compensate for areas now missing. For example, like not having Juan Soto in your lineup anymore. Now you have to face that and a lot of the just devastating longer-term injuries that are now facing the Yankees just a couple of weeks into spring training. And some of these injuries, and maybe even some others that are not popping up to my memory immediately off rip right now, having taken place before camp even started. Giancarlo Stanton's an example of that, and even though he's now playing in games and appearing to be fine, which we knew it was because he was already running at full strength nearly right when he got to camp, you remember the Yankees also having mentioned a little bit Trent Grisham having had some hamstring problems dating back to the offseason, but it was mainly all fixed up by the time he reported to camp, and now he appears fine. But just, it makes you wonder, Whether it's Stanton having experienced this then and not having said anything, or maybe not shed any light on how severe it truly was, or maybe making it worse with any work he did in the offseason, or any of these other guys that appear to be coming into camp before drills even begin upon reporting, already having these injuries. And it makes one think, what are these guys doing in the offseason? And I've had discussions with some people about this. And some have even said, whether it be Twitter people or otherwise, in my personal life, they all say, well, guys probably just do their own thing beyond the teams in the offseason and whatnot, and what can be done to monitor that? I don't really know. That's something that the league might have to get together to discuss. I don't even know how that would really go, to be honest. Players Association, the owners, I don't know. But in any event, it makes you wonder what the deal is and what's going on. And again, this isn't only a Yankee issue. This is everywhere. So many injuries right at the onset of camp. And then obviously we all know how much it continues throughout the regular season. So we definitely don't need that right away, off rip at the start of spring training camp. Because we know it's going to continue even more so throughout the regular season because it's a marathon. It's not going to get any better. Maybe you get some guys back and you pray it slows down, but there's certainly no guarantees when you're playing in games that now count. I even saw just yesterday, I think it was yesterday, Jurickson Profar had dove for a ball in left field, and I think he badly hurt his wrist. I haven't checked back in with that, so I don't know what the deal with him really is now at this moment as of Sunday night, here on the 9th. And I understand that in that moment, instinct takes over, but we've got to try our best not to do that. Dive and risk potential injury. Enough people are injured to begin with, and it's a game that doesn't count. And that's the unfortunate part, because then as a fan, you start to hyper-focus on every little thing that they could do to prevent this, and it starts to become the forefront of your attention, rather than just sitting and enjoying baseball, because you can't, because everyone's always hurt. And then we all start coming up with our own theories and speculations and acting like we're all doctors, because it's what we're mainly faced with as baseball fans now. Everybody's always freaking injured. It's like, what even is the point anymore? What's the point? And then even something even more frustrating, this really started it all. Just a couple of days after the last Yapping Yankees episode, I guess we'll get into even more so into the in-depth news now, the official reporting of it. I just gave some vague and personal insight on all of it just based on my personal feelings towards everything. But let's say we get to the official reporting now that we're on the subject of injuries anyway, because this is mainly what's dominating Yankees news, as you could probably imagine, for this time around, because unfortunately we have just been getting overwhelmed with injury news up and down on this team. Up, down, sideways, every which direction you could possibly imagine. We've been having it thrown right in our godforsaken faces every freaking day, it feels like. So it really just started on February 25th, the overall frustration. Scott Effross came into the game. Now, we know the deal with Scott Effross. The Yankees got him at the 2022 trade deadline. They obviously acquired him from the Cubs, and he had been really solid for them, promising young reliever in his mid to late 20s with many years of control remaining on his contract, making it even more worthwhile, a controllable bullpen guy that you could really use out in the pen. Not costing you much money at all at that point, obviously, too. And he comes to the Yankees at the deadline, and we know what the deal has been with him coming right into spring training for 2025. In the second half of 22, he threw 12 2/3 innings. And then for the very last part of 22, for the entirety of 23, and for nearly all of 2024, the Yankees didn't see him again at all. Spent all of that time injured, whether it be Tommy John or any of the other many issues that have ailed him in that time period. He has missed just about as much time as a human being possibly could, just upon being acquired with a lot of promise. Been very frustrating, especially considering how much he could have been helping this bullpen the last few years. 2022, I know, again, because how fast time goes, it may be hard to really comprehend. But you're talking about, he's been with the Yankees now for 3 years. in this organization. And this guy has pitched 16 innings since 2022. 3 1/3 of those having been in 2024 to amount to the total of 16 since then. And he takes the mound in spring training in 2025. Now, this really was the first opportunity to have seen Scott Effross starting a season with the Yankees at the very beginning, and hopefully getting to see what he's made of for hopefully an entire year. But at least he's finally starting a season, because they got him at the deadline in 22, didn't pitch at all in 23, didn't pitch at all until the very end of 2024, and what little we saw of him then, he mostly stunk anyway. And then now, at the start of spring training of 2025, right away on the 25th, mere days after spring training games began, and right after the last time we had spoken here on the show, he throws one single pitch against the Twins. He grabs his leg and leaves the game. I'm sorry, guys. The guy is a certified cripple at this point. I don't like to go hard on anybody and make it personal, and that's not even my intention here. It's just legitimate, truthful commentating on what has been of Scott Effross's Yankee career so far. And this happening once again for 2025 after one pitch being thrown in any sort of game, even in an exhibition like this, it just proves that people probably already said it about him before, but I wanted to give him a chance considering this was going to be the first year at the very beginning that he was going to get to start at the onset of spring training and go from there at the beginning of a year and see what happens for the rest of it for Effross, because we haven't gotten to see that at any point within the last 3 years, now this being the 4th year of him being on the Yankees. All it took was one pitch for him to grab his leg and leave the game. I don't want to make it personal. It's just being honest and truthful. It's just subjective at this point. Scott Effross has been nothing but a cripple since he has gotten here. And how discouraging it was. It was a solid deadline pickup in 22, and it's just turned out to mean complete crap at this point. Really could have helped the bullpen at a lot of moments and a lot of years of control, many of those completely out the window at this point. Again, 16 innings pitched since the 2022 deadline. It's silly at this point, ladies and gentlemen. So this would end up being a grade 2 hamstring strain. We are not going to see Effross once again for a while. So I would say it's a hit to the bullpen, but is it really? Because the Yankees have barely seen this guy pitch at all for what will be in just a very short time, nearly a half a decade. So on paper, considering what the Yankees were expecting in the bullpen for 2025, is it a hit? Absolutely. In general, not really, just more of the same. Then on Friday the 28th, we hear that Luis Gil was shut down from a bullpen after he had discomfort in his pitching shoulder and that an MRI was getting done. Now, when you hear that, especially when it comes to the shoulder of any pitcher, you are automatically sweating bullets, and that's exactly what I was doing. Not as badly as I am now for Garrett Cole, because, of course, you lose Luis Gil after the rookie year that he had in 24. For the most part, he was very good, but you say it's one pitcher. It's bound to happen. Many other organizations have it even worse with a lot of their starting rotation injuries and whatnot. People have to put up with it all the time, and the Yankees could rise above it, certainly. But I was just nervous personally for him, and I was looking to see how he would follow up his Rookie of the Year campaign. I was very curious. And that made me nervous. I had a very bad feeling about this from jump. And unfortunately, I was correct. Because the MRI revealed a high-grade lat strain, and he is not even throwing for at least 6 weeks. And given this timeline, and people have confirmed this. I said it right when this was announced, before there was even further speculation on it. But I was with my boss and my coworker at the time, who was a Met fan. We were talking about it. And I said right from the onset, I will be shocked if we see Luis Gil before July. I think I even tweeted it out, like right after the news came out. I said, I'll be shocked if we see this man again before July. Because this came out on the 28th, so what, a week or so ago? So maybe about 5 more weeks at least. Remember, at least 6 weeks. It could be 6 to 8 weeks of no throwing. So now we're at like 5 to 7. So let's say it goes the full duration of the way, which you always want to play safe with because you never know with these friggin' Yankee injuries. Timelines are seldom correct and whatnot. And I understand sometimes that can be tough to predict and map out, but nonetheless, it is still the truth. The timelines are seldom correct, to the T at least. So you take it another 7 or so weeks from now. That takes you to, I don't know what, like May? Middle of May, beginning mid-May? And then you're talking about somebody who, at the very beginning of spring training, was automatically shut down for a mere bullpen. So Luis Gil, to this point, really didn't even have much of a ramp-up at all from being completely cold in the winter. For even a simulated freaking game, for instance. So he's going to have to go through the kind of ramp-up, not just after a long-term injury, but that plus after not even having been ramped up from the off-season. So it's going to be an extended ramp-up. So I'd say it's about a month plus. That'll take you to at least beginning mid-June. This is just by going with the at least 6 to 8 weeks originally of no throwing. And then you're talking about however long they might want to put him into rehab games. I'm telling you, I'll be shocked if he is seen before July. At bare minimum, it's going to at least be mid-June. But I'd be shocked if it's before July at any capacity. So the Yankees are now down a pretty big starter. Guy who just came off a winning Rookie of the Year award. And now you're talking about possibly at least July, maybe even the All-Star break, depending on how they want to play it when the time actually comes, without him. Merely a week after spring training games start, now the Yankees have to face the 2025 season, probably about half of it or more, without Luis Gil.
Holy crap!
Yeah. But that's not nearly all, guys, because it would... I feel like that guy in the commercial, but that's not all. I feel like that today when it comes to the injuries. But then on the 1st, March 1st, a day after that Luis Gil news would start to trickle out, it was officially announced that Stanton would, in fact, be starting the season on the injured list after getting injections for both of his elbows to try and offset the pain. And he actually recently just got his 3rd round of injections, which doesn't sound good at all. For a while, there was a lot of vagueness with Stanton. We spoke about this on the last episode. They weren't revealing much of any information. They were saying he was back in New York, and they weren't even sure if it was definitively injury-related. But obviously, he has every right to keep certain things private, obviously. Anything that he wishes to keep private, he has every right to do that. We're not entitled to know every little freaking thing about these guys. But it wasn't sounding good at all. And especially considering it was revealed that he was dealing with this for much of last year, whether he had downplayed it or he was just truly able to play through it, or if it's a chronic condition, it's only going to get worse as he ages, and now he's months older since then. I mean, people were saying it could have been weather conditions, but I mean, he was mostly down in Florida, and over the course of the winter, he really shouldn't have been doing much of anything, and I don't know. It's really weird. So I find it hard to believe it has anything to do with that. I definitely think it might have been downplayed last year. But then again, like I also said on the last Yapping Yankees episode, he was still able to do what he did in the playoffs. So, I mean, how bad was it? Or has it just simply gotten worse since then? Is it chronic? I don't know. We don't really know this right now. All we know is that this continues to be a problem, and he has since come out with more information saying that it is pretty much a great deal of pain for him. He's had to receive 3 rounds of injections for this, and now they've confirmed that there really is no definitive timeline at all for his return. So I don't know what the deal is with Giancarlo Stanton with this elbow problem. It sounds to be a bit more severe. Definitely seems to be a bit more severe than a tennis elbow, which is what they described it as for a great deal of this thing for the last few weeks on both of his elbows. I mean, it sounds bad. I don't know, man. If this ends up being chronic and it's only going to get worse the older he gets, I don't know. And he's at a state now where he can't possibly play through it anymore. I really don't know what's going to become of Stanton. And I know that we have all been saying that all that really matters is that he's ready for October, especially in light of what we saw last year and even years before that. Some people forget that even years prior to that, Stanton always crushed it in October. He's always been a great October player. But last year, it was just magnified because he and Soto basically single-handedly, the two of them together, they were the reason why the Yankees made it to the World Series. So it was just magnified and amplified even more last year. So people are just saying, and myself included, that all that matters is he's ready for October. And maybe that could still be for 2025. But at least for the regular season, I mean, it's still important to get some playing time in so you don't miss the entire year and then you're expected to turn into God again next postseason. But a lot of that seems up in the air right now, guys. It's weird. It's weird what's going on, and there's not really much information on it beyond the fact that it actually is pretty severe. He's had to go for multiple rounds of injections to try to offset the pain as of right now. I don't know. I just don't freaking know. There's not much else I got for you in that department. I did mention him before prior, but DJ LeGeriatric, yeah, that's what I'm opting to call him nowadays, because we know the injury troubles he's had for years now, and I don't want to disrespect DJ on a personal level. I know that giving him a nickname kind of counters that, but anyway, we know the injury troubles he has gone through for years now, and similarly to Scott Efros grabbing at his leg after throwing one pitch, for DJ, right in his first game last Saturday, he tweaked his right calf instantly, almost. So now he's not going to be seen for a while. Now he's going to miss a substantial amount of time from what we know, but that's really all that we know as of now. The calf is not in good shape for him, and we're not going to see him for a while. I feel bad for him personally because, again, on a personal level, I do like DJ, and I still very much appreciate what he did for the last 2 years here. But a nickname is the least of our problems when it comes to the issues we've had to go through with him for years and years now, basically ever since the contract was signed for the most part after 2020. So I think the least hurtful thing I could do is give him a little harmless nickname, to be honest with you. DJ LeGeriatric, that's what I'm choosing to go with right now. Just part of what is an aging core of guys in a closing window, like I've emphasized for some time now. And obviously the next guy that I'm about to mention also takes part in that, highly unfortunately. But as far as DJ in particular, as much as I like the guy personally, like I was just trying to get done saying before, strictly from a roster and team standpoint, I'm completely fine with this. Because I really wanted this to come down to Cabrera and Peraza anyway with third base. And those are a couple of guys I've been keeping my eyes on this spring to see which one would be good to go for third base, possibly. It's probably going to be Cabrera because he's gotten so much more experience in the bigs than Peraza. We know how the Yankees have screwed with him at times, and other times he's had a lot of injury troubles. So I just don't think Peraza is going to get his fair shot. But they're going to have to figure out what to do with him because he's out of options. And a lot of the time the last few years in his development, they had really done a number on his career and his development whenever he hasn't been injured. And he's gotten a lot of sporadic opportunities, not so much consistency, and it really has hurt him for a guy who a lot of people envisioned him being right alongside Anthony Volpe in that middle infield, and it just has not turned out that way for him, and they're going to have to figure out what to do about it. So I'm really expecting Cabrera to get that, but I really just wanted the competition between the two of them. I also was curious about Vivas, but I just didn't really see that happening as much as I was looking forward to seeing him compete for it at the very least. But I knew it was really down to Cabrera and Peraza, and the Yankees really have to stop trying to fool themselves into thinking that DJ could be a part of that, because he couldn't reasonably and definitely shouldn't, to say the least. So it's time that they stop fooling around with this notion that DJ could still contribute if he's healthy, because he can't stay healthy, and even when he has, he doesn't do anything nowadays. He's washed up. Just accept the truth. It's fine. I know financially it's not fine for them because you got a couple of years left and it's quite a bit of money to eat and whatnot. And I know Hal is all anal about the payroll and everything, even though he just saved an ungodly amount of money not signing Soto back. But anyway, that's a story for another day, as we very well know at this point. But it's about time they stop fooling themselves with DJ. Enough is enough. The guy's not going to be healthy, and even if he is, he's not going to contribute. He's missed so much time for years now, and we just know the way it is now. Whether or not you like DJ, and I have no problem with him as a person, obviously, even I can acknowledge it's okay to say that it is not worth pursuing anymore on a professional level. It's done. Move on. And now with this and a lot of other injuries, now you start to look at the fact that the Yankees really miscalculated by not looking externally and trying harder to get a third baseman possibly. Now you're going to have to put that stress on Oswaldo Cabrera probably for a chunk of the first half up until the trade deadline when you try to navigate for other potential solutions. Great job. Fantastic. Anyway, when it comes to other guys that are a part of what is a closing window, unfortunately, what I've spent a chunk of this injury discussion talking about, then as of Friday night, we know that we had heard for the first time that Garrett Cole, just a couple of days ago, was going for tests on his elbow after having had inflammation on it last year. And that obviously had to miss the first 3 months of the year. We've already spoken about this last year and earlier on in the show, many a time in between. So that was the first piece of news, right alongside this Stanton and DJ and heel news. And it was just getting bombarded in 2 days' time with all of this information. And then another bullpen injury to add on to all of that. Yeah, it wasn't over yet. Tyler Matzik, who the Yankees had gotten on a minor league deal, of course, he now has an oblique injury, and his starting the season is now in question as well. Obviously, last year is coming off Tommy John surgery as of 2024, so this was going to be his fresh return, which is why the Yankees got him on a minor league deal in the first place, sort of a prove-it deal, and he had a really good chance of making the roster, and I was looking forward to seeing him because in the last few years, he really has been a part of some really big bullpens, like with the Braves, with their championship team. Granted, that was back in 2021, so it was some years ago. But, I mean, in the regular season that year, in 69 games, he pitched to a 2.57 ERA. And in 2022, a 3.5 ERA in 42 games. Not awful, not at all. In 2023, he was hurt, and then 2024... the Tommy John surgery came through, and now he was finally going to get a good crack at it, first time, really, in his career since 2022. And he was almost certain to make the roster, especially in light of some of these injuries happening on the roster, whether it be the starting rotation injuries or especially the bullpen ones. Loaisiga not being ready at the start of the season. Now Efros is hurt and everything else. The chances are is that he was going to get a fair shake at making the roster when opening day came around and be an efficient second lefty, hopefully, alongside Tim Hill out in that bullpen, who the Yankees also thankfully re-signed a bunch of weeks ago, as we know. So this really sucks to hear. And oblique strains, especially for pitchers, just for anybody, but especially for pitchers, it's not anything you like to hear, and it's probably going to be a little bit of time before we see him again. I doubt he's going to start the season. They say it's in question, but I'm just outright saying that he's not going to start, not just for the sake of pessimism. But obliques are nothing to fool around with, and the season's only starting in a couple of weeks, give or take. So I doubt he's going to be ready for the onset of it, and hopefully beyond that, it's not long-term. Would have been a nice, at least, opportunity for him to be a second lefty out in that bullpen alongside Tim Hill, and I hope that could still be. But as of right now, even he's freaking injured. Then, thankfully, I guess we'll round it off with this, because, I mean, when is enough for crying out loud? But the Yankees then gave an update on Clark Schmidt, and finally, this one wasn't as bad, thankfully, and I hope it just stays this way. Apparently, Boone says that he is going to stay behind in Tampa when the Yankees go north for opening day in those last few days of March. He's going to toss a sim game on March 28th, and then the plan is for him to start the Yankees' sixth game of the year on April 3rd against the Diamondbacks, and by then he should be built to throw about 75 to 80 pitches. So when it comes to the regular season itself, Schmidt should only be missing about a week and a half or two into the season before he starts the sixth game. From what opening day is, at least calendar-wise, about a week and a half. But as far as games, he should only be missing about 5. So really barely even missing a start. So that's good. And I hope that it could stay that way, because obviously that was another long-term injury the Yankees had to deal with last year, was Clark Schmidt. And hopefully this means getting it out of the way for this year, and we can have him the entirety of 2025, because God knows at this point the rotation is probably going to need it. Probably. Because as it stands right now, again, we're just assuming the worst for Cole, and I'm still hopping on board that the second I heard about the elbow because of last year, and luckily just tiptoeing around it. I don't think it's going to be that way for this year again. I don't want to be pessimistic, but it's hard not to, just given the facts and the circumstances and everything. But just assuming the Yankees are not going to have him, now Max Fried is going to be forced to be the ace, then Carlos Rodon's going to be relied on a lot more, and I just don't trust him because he's an emotional maniac. And I don't know, then you're going to need Schmidt and Stroman. I don't trust Stroman, especially not towards the second half when you're maybe about 3-ish months in. Last couple of years, he's fallen off hard from then on. And Will Warren hasn't proven himself in the bigs yet. Looks very good for the most part in spring training, which I'm very happy about, but it's now getting bad. Like I said, it's getting a little worrisome. So the Yankees need Clark healthy. So let's pray that he can stick to the schedule. There are no setbacks. And they could just have him right at the start of April. And please God, have it go smoothly from there. So that's it, guys. That's really all for Yankees news. It's mainly just injuries. That's all it is. They've made their minor league options and everything from guys who started in spring and they don't expect to make the roster, and they've made their cuts here and there. That's to be expected as the weeks go along. As we get closer and closer to opening day, we'll have the roster finalized in a couple of weeks. And that's that. So that's where we stand as far as injuries. It is nothing short of a train wreck. That's where we're at, and we hope and pray that it doesn't get much worse, because who knows how much more the team could even take before you just mentally start folding up the tents, if we have not already. As far as spring training games themselves, usually I do recap games when they happen during the regular season. We know that, but again, for emphasis, I do not usually do that for spring training. I usually just cite and talk about guys who I am keeping my eyes on, and anything that has intrigued me and caught my eye in between yap sessions here on Yapping Yankees. So I figured I'd just raise a couple of points with some things that are intriguing me a bit. Lord knows that winning and losing and scores don't matter right now, but there are a couple of points I wanted to mention today. Firstly, I thought I'd start with Mr. George Lombard Jr. Now, he's hit 2 home runs these last 2 weeks as the baseball world, particularly the Yankees world, is just buzzing about him once again. And he is one of very few prospects where it actually appears completely understandable why the Yankees talk him up so much. Now, the Yankees definitely overrate some guys through the years, and that's inevitable. Some organizations always do that. Some guys just end up being a little bit more of a miss than anticipated. And then some guys might end up being better than anticipated. It just depends on the person. But this actually makes sense as to why the Yankees have been overhyping him. Now, I know it's spring training. I know it's exhibition. He's not facing major league caliber talent yet. I understand all of this. I don't need that explained to me like I'm 5. I need a lot of things explained to me like I'm 5, but not that. But I got to tell you, here, I got to say, I understand. I can't wait till this kid is ready. And it really was unbelievable to me that when the prospect rankings were revealed in the last couple of weeks, how much he jumped. He jumped all the way up to the 2 spot in the Yankees prospect list. And the only one ahead of him is Jason Dominguez at number 1, who's going to be starting on the Yankees roster this year. So technically, if you want to take a look at it from that standpoint, saying that Jason Dominguez really shouldn't be a part of that category because you view him as a starter for 2025 in the Yankees main roster, George Lombard Jr. is now the Yankees' top prospect. And a leap like that in the rankings from one year to the next is commendable. And I get it. I certainly understand why that is, because it's not only just the fact of how he's hitting off people that aren't major league caliber talent or at spring training or exhibition, anything that anybody wants to use to knock down what he's doing. I mean, I saw this kid playing spring training last year when he was even a year younger, when he was 18 years old. He's an infant, this kid. He's only 19 right now even. But when I saw him play in spring training in 2024 and he was 18 going on 19, as opposed to now 19 going on 20, his swing is vastly improved from one year to the next, and I would hope so because he's developing and a whole year has passed. So you hope you see some progress, but I certainly have. And watching the clips of him play this spring, his swing is so quick and clean with such a nice follow-through. I mean, the improvement from one year to the next, when I watch a clip from last spring to this spring, and he was still very talented last spring, even at the age of 18, but I see the growth. I'm impressed, man. And I'm going to be keeping an eye on this kid once the minor league season begins. And I want to see how he continues to progress. He has got my eye on him. I cannot wait till this kid is ready. I'm fascinated by him. So this should be really, really interesting. Tip of the cap to the young stud, Mr. George Lombard Jr. I've got my eye on you, kid. Good freaking stuff. Solid defender, amazing swing that is just progressing as time goes by. Keep our eyes out for this kid. Hopefully he ends up being a star, and it seems to be on that path. Another point when it comes to actual major league competition, because the one thing about George Lombard Jr., as much as people are fascinated and are appreciating his growth and his talent, like I am, a lot of people are saying to just call him up right away. And listen, at the end of the day, we got to take this from a reasonable standpoint. The kid has not seen a game above single-A ball still, and I'm not using it as a point to knock him down like some others are, but he is still facing non-major league talent, and he is playing in spring training exhibition games. So I'm using that as more of a standpoint to be reasonable about him being ready now, as opposed to some others using it to just knock him down and say, oh, it's no big deal, who gives a crap, and it means absolutely nothing. That's the difference in me saying that. I'm using that now to support something different, a different argument. But when it comes to calling him up right now, right this second, that's where you got to start pumping the brakes a little bit, because let's have him get some AA games even in there, and maybe even some AAA. He's still just a freaking teenager as well. So let's let him develop a little bit more. Let's not rush too much, because when you rush someone too much, you could also destroy their confidence and just completely wreck them as well, just mishandle the whole situation. So let's let him develop a little bit more. So in my appreciation and admiration of George Lombard Jr. and his growth and natural talent that we've seen since last year when we first really saw him in spring training, now let's move on to what is actually going to affect the Yankees' major league roster this year, because George Lombard Jr. is and should not be one of those factors, given his age and all the developing he still has left to do. One of the topics of discussion for the Yankees roster, as we know, is who is going to be backup catcher to Austin Wells. Jose Trevino is obviously not here anymore, so he is not going to be competing with Austin Wells. That starting position is obviously very much his. And another very interesting point about Wells, it's been fascinating to watch him lead off the last few games, and it hasn't gone badly necessarily. Again, only so much stock you could put into it given the fact that it is spring training, but certainly interesting and something to keep an eye on, and it apparently is a consideration having him lead off this year, which I think would be very strange personally, and I'm not personally for that. But it's been fascinating to watch the last few games and how it's shaped out. But main topic is who's going to be his backup catcher. Obviously, these people will probably only see about 2, maximum 3 games per week, so it's not the utmost of importance or anything like that, but Austin Wells does need a backup. And who should be it? I have seen enough to have made my choice, and I even said a couple of weeks ago who I was interested by and who I'd like to see have it, and I'm even more in support of what I said a couple of weeks ago. Now, I'm sticking to my guns here, especially considering what has continued to happen, but I'm continuing to go even more full throttle on Mr. J.C. Escara. I want this kid backing up Wells. Another lefty. He's got some pop. And even if you're not really expecting it from a backup catcher, I like the offensive opportunity that he provides. You really just have a backup catcher mainly for defense. That's really what you primarily want them for. But if they're going to be good for that and even provide you with some offensive production or even some pop, that makes it even all the more better. I think he and Wells would make for a solid young combination. I am all in on J.C. Escar. Now, I know that Ben Rice is also a catcher, and people are talking about him being a potential backup. Alex Jackson's another option who they just acquired in the offseason, and you're mainly just going to get the defense from him. He's really not going to provide much at all offensively based off of his past. And we did say the same thing about Trevino in that regard, because Trevino really seldom ever did anything offensively when he was on the Rangers, and the Yankees got him, and then 2022 he kicked ass. So who really does know at the end of the day? All I know is that I'm liking what I see from JC Escar. There is a real, legitimate competition going on for this actively in spring training right now, so these guys are putting their all into it, and I very much like what Escar is doing. I really do. I'd like for the Yankees to give him a shot. Now, if they do have to pivot ultimately, if it doesn't work out, then fine. That's something you can do. You cross that bridge when you get to it. But if you're really using spring training as sort of an indicator as to who you should go with, I'd like for it to be Escara. Provides you with another left-handed hitter, and he's got some pop. He's given you some opportunity to give some offensive production from a backup catcher standpoint. I'm cool with it. Speaking of pop, if you wanted an additional example of that, he even hit another home run today in the game against the Cardinals. Take a listen to it. Credit to the Cardinals broadcasting team.
Another rocket hit to right. Nootbaar's going to turn and watch this one go. J.C. Escara with a two-run homer.
There you go. So, I'd like to see him be the backup catcher. And if it's not going to be him, then I guess go with Alex Jackson, I suppose. You are going to get very good defense out of him. As of right now, that's my takeaway from Escara, though. He is kicking ass. Has multiple home runs this spring, and he's just getting better and better, it would seem. He wants that job, and I think he deserves it. Now, speaking of Ben Rice, the other option for that, I know he's another option to be a catcher since he caught a lot in the minors. I very much either prefer him be an occasional platoon with Goldschmidt at first base, or, in light of Stanton's absence, and just the absence of a number of guys now, obviously, I wouldn't be completely opposed to seeing what he does as DH. I mean, I don't like the extended stretches of slumping that he tends to go through pretty frequently. But as of right now, listen, the Yankees didn't think it necessary to really get a third baseman or make any other improvements. And in fairness to them, other than third base, I thought they were pretty solid to go on paper. But that was just another factor to it. They don't really have all that many options right now. And if they were to make a trade of some kind, not really many big names to give away, particularly in the minors with the way the Yankees farm system is right now. It's not the best. And, I mean, even we were just talking about it on the last episode. Even Chase Hampton, high up on the prospect list, towards the top with pitching prospects. And he's getting Tommy John surgery as of now. So it's just, the Yankees really missed the boat. They kind of just have what they have at this point. They could finagle something if they want to try, but I view them more so as just kind of having what they have at this point. So I think that Ben Rice could be tried as a DH for a while if you're not going to try anybody else there, and just have, I guess, Cabrera at third base, Oswaldo, and if it's not him, then Peraza, obviously. I've wanted Peraza to finally get that chance since it is his final shot, really, since he doesn't have any other options. But they're probably going to go with Cabrera. I'd be shocked if they don't. So, we'll see. But I've been keeping an eye on Escara for backup catcher, seeing what Ben Rice does as well. Ben's had his moments this spring so far, but otherwise nothing crazy to write home about, really. Like, even today, he went 0 for 4, 2 strikeouts. He's been 174 this spring. Like, it's just, I don't know. Ben's a weird baseball player. Kicks ass in AAA in the minors, but then when he faces the major league talent, I don't know, he goes into these weird bouts of just not doing anything. As of everybody else this spring so far, if you want me to just brush through them really quick, Volpe hasn't really been doing much outside of today. He hit his second home run today. It was a shot. He went 2 for 3 today. His batting average is 200, OPS 640. I don't know, man. Volpe is, we all know how I feel about him. He had a solid postseason. I gave him all the due credit for that. But 24 in a lot of ways was very disappointing in regards to him. In some ways took steps back from his rookie year, actually, which I'm not a fan of. I know some people say sophomore year, blah, blah, blah. I know. Well, all I know is that I better see some pretty damn solid growth in his freaking junior year over here. That's all I know. This is year 3 for Volpe now. I want to see something from how he was talked up. We've seen bouts of what he's capable of, but then just extended periods of time where this is just not the kid that we were told about. It's just not, and it's really annoying, to be really honest with you. So I'm hoping these spring training numbers so far are not an indication of what we will get once again when the regular season actually comes around. Jazz Chisholm, he hasn't really been doing too much incredible at the plate either this spring. I mean, he had a nuke today as well alongside Volpe. It was a freaking bomb to right field, so I'll give him that. He also was 2 for 3 himself. Otherwise, nothing crazy. I do appreciate how hard he and Volpe are working to really create as solid of a middle infield as possible. I do like how they're gelling with each other at times defensively, and I hope that continues because the Yankees' middle infield is very important. I think just about anything is an upgrade from a defensive standpoint from Gleyber Torres, so I'm hoping that Jazz proves that now that he's back at his primary position. No excuses, and hopefully Volpe continues to take those further steps into his development in the major leagues. We all know that his defense is less of a question than his offense. So hopefully that continues, and they just create a really nice duo going up the middle. And that's really all I could hope for. Jason Dominguez, his numbers are in the spring so far, I guess. I don't know, some people were saying that he might have been feeling a little bit of heat from how well Spencer Jones had been doing, and Spencer really has gotten a hold of a few balls here. And, well, that did not come out right. I cracked myself up. But anyway, some people were saying he was feeling the heat from Spencer Jones a little bit, but I don't know. I don't really think that's too relevant. But he was 2 for 3 today, as well as averages up to 241. Overall, he has hit just 1 home run, drove in 3 runs. I don't know. So we'll just see what we continue to get from him for the rest of the spring. Oswaldo, he's hitting 280. He went 1 for 3 today, so good stuff from Waldo. Like I said, he's just making more of a case for himself on top of his additional experience that he already has over guys like Peraza to just get that third base job. But speaking of Peraza, he also did play today, and he himself is batting .286, went 2 for 3. So Peraza's still hanging in there. Like I said, I would like to see him get the shot personally. That's just my opinion. But it's probably going to be Waldo. I've accepted that. Carrasco also started today's game, just for those who didn't know. And that's also another guy who could be in the mix now that the rotation is potentially in shambles. I mean, we were talking about other options that could happen. Will Warren stepping up, or maybe they call on Carrasco because he was signed to a minor league deal. They would have to add him to the roster. I hope it's not that. I'd rather give it to some young blood. I know that Carrasco hasn't had a bad spring, but Carrasco's aging out, and I don't think he's in a really good spot in his career right now. I mean, he's been really underwhelming for years now. He's 37 years old. I'd rather see if Will Warren can continue to grow, and this is coming from someone who was really hard on him like I was last year. And that's someone who I'm also keeping an eye on, especially now that the rotation's fallen apart in real time. Because, listen, almost nobody was as hard on Will Warren last year as I was whenever he was given opportunities, whenever they needed him. Because it was frustrating to me. He had really good stuff that moved very well, but just no control over anything. I called him at the time an unpolished Michael King, because I felt like his breaking ball and even his fastball moved very similarly in some regards to a lot of Michael King stuff. And we know what happened with Michael King when he ended up perfecting his craft. I mean, he's a top-tier pitcher now. He's amazing, whether it be long relief in the bullpen or given a shot in a starting rotation in San Diego. He's amazing. And I think Will Warren had that potential, and you usually get most frustrated with guys who you know have that potential but don't deliver. And Will Warren has shown some of that potential even more, but has actually started to deliver a bit in spring training here. So I'm hoping he's the one to really grow up, maybe a little faster than he has to. But somebody's got to step up now. Somebody's got to step up, because we're assuming we're going to hear the worst about Cole. And we're missing Luis Gil long term. And how much are you going to rely on Marcus Stroman to be really effective, especially for an extended period of time? Can you really show full confidence in Carlos Rodon? He's about as unstable as they come and as inconsistent as they come. So, I mean, when you find yourself in this state that the Yankees have found themselves in, somebody's got to come in and step up. And I prefer it to be the young blood, especially when they show the potential to do so. Even if it's a little bit sooner than they might be ready for, sometimes you just got to throw them into the fire and hope for the best and see what happens. And the Yankees have worked that out in their favor a lot of the time, particularly with pitching. Especially with Matt Blake leading the way with the Blake Lab. So We'll see, but Carrasco's another guy who could throw his hat into the mix. He started today, so I figured I'd bring that up. But otherwise, I mean, the results for spring training obviously don't really matter, my friends. They're 7-7 right now, the Yankees, and they have a game against the Tigers tomorrow at 1 o'clock, and Will Warren's actually starting that game, so I'm going to be very curious to see how he looks in his next outing tomorrow. And yeah, he's 2-0 with a 1.13 ERA this spring so far. So, and again, it is spring training, but you got to go off of something when it comes to somebody who might play a pretty big role on your roster come the regular season. So, the Yankees have a game every day this coming week except for Wednesday. And then the following week, they play every single day. Right through to next Sunday, the 23rd, which is probably going to be the next time we yap. So, that's that as far as the Yankee spring training schedule. We'll keep our eyes on everybody who may play a big role on the Yankees roster come opening day, but otherwise that's the deal. Just a few talking points I wanted to bring up as far as spring training is concerned. Rest of the regulars doing their thing. I like how Cody Bellinger looks so far. He has roped 3 homers now, and I mean roped. Really got a hold of him. Oh, I can't believe I almost forgot to mention this, but another guy I also wanted to talk about briefly as far as who I'm keeping my eyes on. Another guy who could very well contend for a potential DH on top of somebody like Ben Rice. And this is actually the guy who I feel should get the DH position, at least for now, if not having to also platoon in a number of other positions, outfield, even first base. So I feel like he could be very helpful in the roster on top of what he's done this spring so far. But Dom Smith, he's actually a big point of discussion who I wanted to talk about today. So far this spring, he's batting .294, 2 homers and 7 RBIs himself. He could be a number of different things, whatever the Yankees need of him. I mean, a couple of days ago, he played out in left field. He can play first. He could DH. He could do a number of different things. And he's got his fair share of big league experience. He's played plenty in the major leagues for years now. In his late 20s, I think the Yankees should give him a shot. That's actually who I feel should be the DH. So I really personally, as of right now, and this could change in the next couple of weeks, the last 2 weeks of spring training really, but as of right now, what I would do if I were the Yankees, I would make J.C. Escara the backup catcher. I would keep Ben Rice for platooning anything, whether it be DH or first base or whatever, because I don't want him in the lineup too much. Because, yes, he also is an additional lefty, and he gets a hold of some pitches, definitely at times. He's got a stroke of power to him, but there's nothing that he does that Dom Smith also can't do. Dom Smith gets a hold of plenty of them. He is very versatile himself. He has a lot more major league experience. He is also a lefty. I think Dom Smith should get that shot, personally. So I think Dom Smith should be DH. I think Escara should be backup catcher. I would like to see Peraza get a shot at third base, and I'd like for Ben Rice and Cabrera and Trent Grisham for outfield probably to be on the bench if you're going to have that many players for the bench and for offense overall. But that's my ideal placement of everybody, if I had to say. Escara backup, Peraza at third, but if Cabrera gets third base, I won't hate it. I would just feel bad for Peraza because he really doesn't have any options left. And I would have Dom Smith for DH. And you could always rotate people around as the days go along. We all know how much Boone likes to change things. He hates consistency. We all know that. So you're going to see Bellinger be moved around at times, sometimes because he could play first base as well, or maybe they put him out in left field if the Jason Dominguez thing in left field really doesn't work, because we've really seen some ugliness continue out there, unfortunately. So maybe that switch happens, or if one of them gets a day off, you need to put Dom Smith out there, or at first base, or at DH. Switch things around, maybe a DH Judge sometimes, and you put Bellinger in right, and then Dominguez in center, and then Smith out in left, or I don't know. There's so many things the Yankees could do. Everson Pereira's another guy they might want to keep around on reserve, and he can play left field as well. So Boone's always shifting things around. Who's hurt? Who's healthy? Just who needs a day off? Like, so much crap could happen. We all know with the Yankees, all the load management BS. So to have these guys who could play a lot of different positions, it's helpful, especially when you have a manager who despises consistency like Boone does. But still, at least to start the year, that's who I think should occupy each position that the Yankees may not have decided on yet. And they shouldn't decide on it as of yet. There's still a couple of weeks to go. But a few guys who I really like what they're doing this spring so far. I really like how Dom Smith looks, and I really like how JC Escarra looks. And as much as I love Peraza, if it's Cabrera, then it's Cabrera. Whatever. Those are really the main talking points that have my attention primarily this spring as far as what could happen with the roster once the season begins. And I actually just got a message. There is a Cole update. Oh, my God. Do I want to look? It actually didn't happen mere minutes after I uploaded the podcast. I'm actually going to get to say this in real time. That's awesome. That does not always happen. Wow. So I am happy about that much, but do I really want to see this news? Do I? You guys already know what it is by the time you're listening to this, obviously, but I'm seeing this in real time. Okay, let's rip the Band-Aid off, I guess. Here goes nothing. Gerrit Cole has been recommended to have Tommy John surgery. They're still waiting on a second opinion to confirm. I mean, who's surprised? Absolutely nobody. I've only been saying this for the entire show so far, that this is probably what we're going to be faced with, and probably was the deal, given how they were talking about it. Cashman, Cole himself, really just appearing extremely pessimistic and preparing for the worst. That's an exact quote. So I'm not surprised by this, but still hurts to have the Band-Aid ripped off, you know? We'll see what this second opinion says. I mean, I don't think that he's going to tiptoe around it like he did last year, and now that it's officially out there that it was definitively recommended for him to have Tommy John, it's probably going to happen. It's extremely rare that one person says that it's recommended and then it doesn't happen. That just usually just happens. So that's the latest, guys. I mean, barring this second opinion that they keep talking about, it's officially out in the news that he's been recommended for Tommy John. It's going to happen. Bank on it. I'd be shocked if it doesn't. So just be ready for that. Damn it. Damn it. What's the point? Like what is the point? I don't get it. I just don't get it, bro. I don't get it. These injuries need to be studied. There needs to be something done about it. I mean, so many schools of thought on what could be done. I mean, I mentioned it before. Some people were discussing them monitoring what these guys do in the winter, because there's just no excuse to show up to camp with these injuries like this, and like before the season even gets underway. 6+ month season. Like, is it the training? Is it the conditioning? Is it just there are just glass vases with more durability than them? I don't know. I don't know what to even say about it anymore, man. There's about to be a very good chance that the Yankees have to go through 2025 without Gerrit Cole. Like, yeah, missing him for the first half last year sucked. But there was optimism that they were going to get him back, and they did. But, like, knowing now that he's not going to be around at all. And people ask me, and this could get worse. Like, right now, there's Stanton being completely up in the air. You're missing Luis Gil for half the year at least. Judge isn't getting any younger. You don't have Juan Soto in that lineup anymore. Even if you did pivot nicely in the offseason and get some other options, you don't have Soto in the lineup anymore. It's just still the truth, whether you like it or not. And people ask me, why since like 2021, and I've said this on my show before, you could go back and listen. I don't know which friggin' episode it was of the 251 now. You have to take a look for yourself. I don't have the time or the patience to do that myself, but there's a reason Why I've said for years now. My good buddy James Celestin, he's on Twitter, and he comments on my social media posts all the time for the show. You can ask him for proof. I've been saying this for years to him and everybody else. People ask me why I've been saying this, and this is why. Exactly the reason. I have said that if the Yankees have not won the World Series by 2026, oddly specific prediction going back even as far as like 4 or 5 years ago. But I've been saying this since like 2021. If they haven't won by 2026, this window is probably closed. Some people now in real time or in hindsight might say that that window is already closed, especially in light of this news right now. But years ago, I said 2026, if they have not won by then, this current window of players is in trouble of never winning. And this is only getting more amplified because I've always said Cole is getting older. And going into 2027, for instance, just for the sake of my prediction back then, he'll be transitioning into his late 30s and injuries might kick up. Now look at this. Judge by then will be in his mid-30s, mid to late 30s. Transitioning into his later part by then. Stanton. I mean, look at him now. He's got this elbow problem. Who knows when or even if he'll play anytime soon. You want to talk about 2027? Don't bank on that. And that's really a major core of these guys right there. Without that foundation, you're moving on to the next group of kids and building around somebody else. That's just the way that it is. And this amplifies that even more. And it's making me feel like 2024 really was the shot and it was just blown. Sky high. It's just creeping up on me, that feeling. It's haunting me. It's tormenting me. And it even further amplifies the humiliation, as if that embarrassment needed any amplification whatsoever than what it already was. I don't know, bro. I don't know. If the Yankees are without Cole for 25, they're missing Heel for half the year. Stanton's a complete unknown. You have your injuries out in the bullpen a bit now. Like, Loizaga's not going to be ready immediately, but he'll be ready eventually. But who knows if he stays healthy after that? He's never been able to. F. Ross went down after one pitch. LeMahieu went down after one game, not even making it through that first game. Clark Schmidt's got an injury irritating him right now, but he seems to be fairly on pace, just maybe a single start behind, but it's getting really bad, man. If the Yankees get another major injury, like to the lineup or something, I don't know, the tents are going to start to fold up a little bit. And I hate to talk like that, and some people are going to crap on me for saying that, because they're like, oh my God, how could you say that? You have no idea. The season hasn't even started yet. You know what? You're not entirely incorrect. You're not. But you want to act like it's not at least very concerning? I think at that point you just need a reality check. I don't know. This is not good, man. It's not good. Cole and Judge are at the center of this thing for at least a couple of more years, including this one. And without the one of them, for sure, for an entire year, I don't know, man. I don't know. This is getting interesting. That's all I can tell you. Really, really bad official news there. So I would not expect to see Garrett Cole in 2025. That's my advice to you. I would not hold your breath. I certainly am not. We'll see what this second opinion is revealed to be. We're probably going to hear about it at some point in the next 2 days. I'm glad I was at least able to give this update in real time and not have it go out mere minutes after I'm done recording, frustratingly so, like some other pieces of news have happened with the last 6 years since I've been doing this show, but still really tough to report there. So that's my advice to you. Don't expect to see this guy in a mound in 2025. Absolutely sucks. Sucks. Well, let's move on to social media. and wrap this up. I'm sorry that this is mainly negative, but I mean, this is the story of the Yankees for the last bunch of days. I mean, it's just mainly been injury news like this. So there's some positives to look at, like I started with the show, like with the clocks moving ahead and the excitement with that. Just the regular season starting in 2.5 weeks, like that not being far away, and certain other competition going on, and certain things to keep our eyes on in spring training that could lead to a lot of new exciting things for when the season begins. But a lot of it is just unfortunately objectively being overshadowed by a lot of this crap, and there's just nothing I could do about that. So let's move on to the social media segment, and this open-ended question I had for you today just takes on a whole new meaning in light of this brand new, fresh, official Garrett Cole news, but let's go for it anyway. Question is, have you reached a point of true concern with the frequency and severity of some of these injuries right now, or are you still confident in this Yankees team? I'm definitely personally not saying anything's over, because I never say that before the season even begins. I mean, listen, it could be a next man up, somebody steps up and just covers things unbelievably and helps to put Band-Aids on certain things, long-term or short-term, and we could be really surprised into something that we don't even know about yet. And then there's the trade deadline. Some teams are awful after a first half, but then come back in the second half and go even as far as the World Series. We've seen that a number of times just in the last 5 to 10 years alone. So you never know what a long regular season like baseball will have in store, regardless of how bad things appear heading into the regular season. So nobody's saying it's over yet. But am I concerned? Absolutely. I mean, especially as of this Garrett Cole news that just dropped within the last half hour. Are you kidding me? There's no joking matter not having your ace for an entire year. It's one thing to miss like the first half like last year. A whole season on top of Heel being in sort of a similar position to Cole last year, missing about half the year, plus maybe, who knows. With Schmidt not being a sure thing because he's still working off some nagging issues he's had the last couple of weeks. Couple of injuries out in the bullpen. I don't know, man. It's getting really bad. The unsuredness with Stanton. And I know that only has so much value for certain people because he only does so much in the regular season due to his health anyway. But still, it's a bat that does something sometimes, especially in October. And that might still be fine for October. We'll see. But we're 2 weeks into spring training games, guys. Still 2.5 weeks away from even the regular season, which spans 6+ months, not even including the playoffs. So it's not a good start. It's not. It's really, really not. And this is a big problem we're seeing around all of Major League Baseball, and somebody's got to figure something out. I know that some people were really crapping on Eric Cressy as well because the Yankees did hire him to try to lessen these things, and last year was a little bit of a turn in the right direction, as I said earlier on in the show. But outside of that, especially to start this, I know some things are just out of people's control, but I would like somebody to try to shed some light, provide some clarity on what the hell the problem could be in their professional opinion. I don't know, but it is concerning, highly concerning, and I'm confident in the team, I guess, mainly just because the regular season hasn't even gotten underway yet, and there are certain aspects of it I'm still very excited for, like what Bellinger's going to do, Goldschmidt, the new additions to the team, Max Fried, Devin Williams, what's going to come of the competitions for backup catcher, who's going to get the third base job, and how they each do, how a certain addition like Dom Smith or a second try like Ben Rice might work out. Like, there are a lot of things I'm looking forward to. Jason Dominguez, seeing if he could ultimately handle left field and how he's going to be offensively, which is the main thing, and how if he doesn't handle left field, like what they'll do, if they'll put Bellinger out there in left and move Jason back to his primary position in center. A lot of things that are very intriguing and exciting still. So I am still confident and excited in a lot of other ways, but at the same time, I am extremely and truly concerned about this for sure. So let's get some of your thoughts here. Let's start with @Zalman888 saying, every team has injuries. Too many guys overtrain in the offseason. And yeah, this is my good buddy Jed on Twitter. Thanks for replying, Jed. And we had a thread about this after he had replied to this. And yeah, it does seem like that. And this was one of the guys I had that conversation with as to like what guys do in the offseason and how it could potentially be monitored. And the slippery slope they may have to take in order to get that going. Like, it's just interesting. There could definitely be overtraining in the offseason, and I mean, there's really little other excuse or reason for them to be coming into camp before drills even get underway with these injuries that we've seen when they should have had months and months off. It's ridiculous. Next, we have at 92 in 82 saying it's really annoying and there's definitely a level of concern. If Bellinger can't get somewhere close to his MVP production and Goldschmidt can't bounce back, there's going to be problems. Yeah, it's definitely going to get hairy at that point. I agree. A lot of things have to go right, and they very well could, either with them or other players that we know not even of yet. In the immediate future or in the distant future. Who knows? We'll have to see. At Christian_NYYST, my buddy Christian says, a lot of my optimism about the Yankees was that I thought they had the best rotation in the American League. Now Heel is out at least 3 months, and Cole could be a worst-case scenario. I'm only as optimistic as the facts allow, and they went from AL favorites to a team that could be in sell mode at the deadline. Well, I don't know about sell mode. I certainly hope not. I mean, if a lot of the things go right that they're expecting, then they definitely shouldn't be in sell mode. If they're remotely competitive, then they'll never be in sell mode. I'm not even sure the Yankees are morally allowed to be in sell mode. But aside from that, I don't know if it could get that bad, because they did still survive half a year last year without Cole. Now, a full season is another story. Yes, absolutely. But now they could be missing Cole, and very well probably will be missing Cole for an entire year and Heel for that long, and that damages the rotation significantly, and that could very well fall apart entirely. Especially if somebody else is to get injured. So, yeah, I had a lot of optimism like you too. And the American League is weak, so it is even easier to say that they are American League favorites just to say that for the sake of how weak it is elsewhere. But now, if things continue on this path, I don't know, dude. I don't know about selling at the deadline, but I mean, it could get that bad. Who the hell knows? I don't think it will. I pray it doesn't. But it could get ugly. It could. At Marcy_Crum says, I'm somewhat concerned that it is not required for the players to stay in playing shape year-round. If they did so, injury numbers would be significantly lower and much less serious. Yeah, but they come into camp with these injuries, though. I mean, they have to be doing something in order to have their bodies get hurt like that when they haven't even started fielding drills yet. I mean, I don't know. It's weird. I think they're probably overtraining the offseason. I agree with Jed and the others that said that. Something's got to be up here. At Baseball Tzar says, I'm confident. We only get our news about injuries. Our team is on the older side. We're the 8th oldest team. CBA doesn't allow their training staff to work with the players during the offseason. It's all on the players. Yeah, and that kind of sheds light on what we were saying before. So I agree with that. That could definitely play a part in it, but also the age thing. For many years, up until the last year or two, the Yankees were one of the younger teams, as we know, especially since the Baby Bomber era began. Now that era is phasing out, which is why I have said what I've said for years now, that like 2026 into 2027, if they haven't won by then, it's probably not going to happen for this group of guys. There's a good chance that it won't. I could be wrong, but it probably won't happen because they're only getting older and they've had shots that they've blown. Maybe they could still win when they're still at the tail end of their careers, and it might just not be primarily because of them anymore. Maybe other guys will have come up since then, like Spencer Jones, and maybe Volpe will be much better by then. Maybe certain other factors of the team will have changed, and they have other guys that help carry them to that title, but it won't primarily be because of this current core group of guys. They'll be on their way out or just about done by then. Or too old to do anything, or getting injured. Like, it's just the natural progression of time. So, yeah, that's a thing too. The team is aging, and that's why I've said what I've said. They got to be real careful here. Rebecca at Peace Now for Life says, Mike, this is going to come as no surprise to you, but yes, I'm still confident in this team. What? No, surely that cannot be. Sure, the injuries are tough, but it's time for others to step up and lead. Going to be a great season. Oh, God, I hope so. I hope so, Rebecca. But yeah, others are going to have to step up. That's part of it. So that in 2019 with Next Man Up and certain other guys through the years, it's going to have to happen. At Fundamentals NYY says, I'm concerned. Nobody blames you. At Canes Eagles 1 says, I'm not worried at all. It's spring training right now, and baseball is a long season. Well, that's right, and the season hasn't even begun, and that's the reason I gave to not be overly concerned. But also, the baseball season being a long one also can, on the flip side, be reason to be concerned if the season hasn't even begun, and yet this is already beginning to happen. So you can look at that a couple of different ways. But if that's the way you choose to look at it, glass half full, then I commend you for it, and you're perfectly entitled to do so. At Dr. Guzman says, confident, plenty of talent to win. Yeah, there's a couple aspects I'm still excited about. I agree. At Mike B _923 says, there's definitely a level of concern. Marcus Stroman went from possibly being traded to the possible number 3 starter. And now the Yankees' second best bat on the team is gone after the second best bat on the team last year went to the Mets. But let's see where things stand after 162 games. Yeah, Soto's a part of that, like I've been saying as well. That's a valid mention. And Stroman, yeah, that whole situation, like I had anticipated, did end up being awkward. And then there was the whole thing like, oh, I won't accept the bullpen role. I'm a starter. So shades of Gleyber Torres there, which you don't like to see. But like we've always said, too, these things usually have a way of taking care of themselves, and in this case, it is a very bad way of taking care of itself, but hey, it did once again. We always say that, both in this show and many other analysts say it, and we are all correct, because now he's going to get to do what he so wants to anyway as a starter, so whatever. Guy gets what he wants anyway. Either way, it's whatever. But yeah, we'll see where they stand. Definitely concerned, though. At iDaddy Omar says, yes, every year there's injuries. I think the physical therapists, exercise instructors, and trainers should all be fired. Clearly they are not doing a good job. Well, then there are going to be a lot of people throughout Major League Baseball that are fired, my friend, because again, as much as it is easy to just forget that this isn't just a Yankees problem, or it is to blame the Yankees for this, it's an epidemic we're seeing around the entire sport. And the Yankees should be partially held accountable for that, like other crews should as well. But this is more just an overall study that needs to be done on a league level, I think, because this is just a league-wide issue. It's a real problem. But I completely understand the frustration. It is absolutely justified. At Savage Empire Pod says, I want to know why Hal sinks a ton of money into Cressy's, I want to keep it clean, Cressy's BS sports science. He was hired to reduce injuries, yet every year there's some SHIT. Yeah, I mean, with him and many others. I don't know, man. A study needs to be opened up. Laura at Laura _Icemont. My buddy Laura says, I'm concerned, but not to the point where the sky is falling concerned. It sucks that we may lose Cole on top of losing Stanton and Heel for a while, but I believe that the team will overcome the adversities. Optimism, okay. At Tudo _Calcio 13 says, no, old players get hurt, build around the youth, and supplement with key free agents. Won't win until we do that. Sure, you can make the playoffs regardless, but to what end? Goal is to build a team to win the World Series. Amen. And that kind of goes back to the unfortunate thing that I've been saying for a while now, that even if the Yankees were to make it back to the playoffs, I don't think they're going to be able to beat the Dodgers anyway. So it's kind of just like running into a buzzsaw either way, which is kind of unfortunate. Like, they could win another pennant, and that's great. But I don't see anybody beating the Dodgers. I just don't. So there's that basic fact right there, even without considering all the minute details of the Yankees' issues. So, again, just goes with the overall theme. What's the freaking point? At Rebirth Chaos 09, my buddy James Celestin, who I mentioned before. James says, not confident at all without Cole and Stanton. This season is cooked. There's going to be people who think that, and there are some tough blows to take here before it even begins, so it's tough to blame people for their frustration and, to a degree, pessimism, I guess. Spencer at Musician DMD. Hope you're well, Spence. He says, Mike, I'm as disappointed as any Yankee fan at the news of Stanton, Cole, and Heel. It has undercut the confidence of all the fans, understandably. That said, I think we still have the best roster in the American League, and we are not the only team with problems. Recalling last year when the season started without Cole, the Yankees went into the spring with the best record in baseball. I think he meant with the season, right? In fact, they didn't falter until Cole returned. It'll be more challenging, but I still feel good about the team. Until I see otherwise, I will remain confident. Yeah, you're actually correct. That is when they did start to spiral, similarly to 2023, which the very start to that season was pretty good, but then it just completely fell apart at the seams. And then in 2024, for longer, they were good. About the same time, actually. But that's actually a theme we've been seeing for some time now. We saw in 2022 they were on record to win like over 120 games as of the first half, and they completely fell apart to winning barely like 90 games. And then in 2023 it was okay at the very beginning, then it obviously just fell apart. And in 2024 they started off pretty friggin' solid even without Cole, and then he came back and then things were weird. So yeah, it has been odd. So that is a good point to reference back to that, Spencer. You are completely correct, but again, different ball game to him being out an entire year this time, and it's really starting to look like it's going to be that. Especially with that first recommendation, I doubt he tiptoes around it this time. But yeah, at least you're understandable with other fans' confidence taking a serious hit, because it should. It's really bad crap happening right now. It's really bad. But we'll see. I appreciate the confidence. To a degree, I still am too, but I'm deeply concerned myself. At Luigi_457 says, oh, I'm confident that we'll miss the playoffs. Yeah, that's definitely worthy of a Farouk damn. Ouch. Hopefully it doesn't get there. That would be the definition of bone crushing coming off of a World Series friggin' appearance. Oh my god. All right, let's just do a couple more because we have so many replies this time around, and we do usually every time, but I really appreciate all the interaction every single episode, guys. You know that, but we are going very long here as per friggin' usual. So let's just do a couple more here. Let's see. At Thomas C. 2083 8856. Guys, gotta stop with all the numbers and the handles. Thomas says, Stroman and Warren, come on down. Oh, yeah, they kind of have to. So, kind of have to. At Anthony Scarabin says, depends on who will surprise and step up, or the plan by Hal and Cashman to replace Cole. Once we know the results, Cashman owes it to the fan base for a press conference. Yeah, that really is what it comes down to. As far as how they replace Cole, well, the answer to that question is that they don't. You don't replace Cole. You just find someone to step up. But there's no one replacement for him. If it is a replacement, it's probably going to come in the form of more than one person. But you don't solely replace that. He's the ace. But I get what you mean. But a lot of it's going to be that. Someone's going to have to step up. Like it has happened in the past. Has to. Otherwise, it just won't work. All right, you know what? Let's do our usual final two for the social media segment because we are going real long here. So first up, we have got my girlfriend at Vic Salimo. And her reply is yes, unfortunately. My confidence is shaken. Some of our biggest soldiers are down and out, and without them holding down the fort, if the rest of the team doesn't step up, the season may be over before it even begins. Yeah, she says what a lot of us have also said. Someone's got to step up, otherwise it's going to get really bad. And again, it would really suck, especially coming off the heels of what just happened to finish off 2024. So, yeah, it's tough to disagree with Vic's concern that mirrors a lot of our own. But last but certainly not least is my mom, Julia Gina Scudero, and she says, hi, Mike, great to listen to another Yapping Yankees. Thank you, Mom. Thanks for all you do to get these great episodes out to us. You are welcome. To answer your question, I'm truly worried and disappointed, too. I thought we were going to have a crazy pitching staff, but now the prize crystal is breaking one by one. That's a way to put it. This was supposed to be our primary weapon. I'm going to try to remain positive, but no Cole, no dice. Hope the bats hit this year. That's been a serious problem at times. Can someone please tell me the workout regimen of these players? Why are they so fragile at times? Decades ago, it seemed the pitchers pitched doubleheaders at slower speeds. They went on and on. And now it seems there's just a lot more harping on pitch counts and a lot more delicacy. What the hell? I hope they hold it together and get to the playoffs and Judge doesn't daydream about that daughter of his instead of focusing on the game. Let's go Yankees. For the record, if you knew my mom, you would know that that's not her attacking Judge. It's just her version of sarcasm. But, yeah, she just wants the team to perform at its best like we all do. So, anyways, but, Judge still does deserve some flack for what he did in the playoffs last year. I'm not going to tiptoe around that as much as I love the guy and love him as the captain. I mean, fair is fair. You got to tell it like it is. He sucked in the playoffs, and ultimately what happened in Game 5 is unforgettable and inexcusable, period, end of story. But in any event, yeah, the pitching was a real point of strength on paper coming in. We've spoken about that at great length. You're completely correct. Your description about the prize crystal, that is all very funny as always. Yeah, obviously things have changed through the years, but everything's always evolving. Things are changing, They did throw slower back then. They had different programs. They had different preparations and schedules and habits and ways of doing things. It's just, that's how it always goes. You could make that argument for just about any sport almost. The way it used to be, why can't it be like that back then? Maybe there are certain aspects of the game of a bygone era that they could study and look into that could potentially assist in the longevity of these players, particularly the pitchers, because the pitchers are really the ones with mostly the epidemic. Sure, there are position player injuries all the time as well that need to be looked into, but especially the pitchers and their arms. My God. By nature, the human arm isn't meant to do with what pitchers do, but, I mean, it's getting to a point now where it's just unbelievable. It really is. So you do have to ask what the hell, honestly. But there's a lot of different factors that could go into it, and that's why it's complicated and nobody's figured it out yet, but there needs to be studies opened up. Definitely has to be. So, we'll see, but the frustration, the doubt, it's not unfounded. It's completely understandable. I share a lot of it, if not all of it, with certain of you. But I'm not saying it's over yet. I'm certainly not packing it up before it even starts. So, both can be true. And you just hope for the best. But the fact of the matter is, guys, is that we still have a couple of weeks left before the friggin' season even gets underway, and all this has happened so far. So, we'll stay tuned with everything we spoke about, and hopefully nothing else friggin' happens here. I was able to give out the updated Cole news in real time as of now. We'll probably get an update on that second opinion within the next couple of days, I imagine, at the most. And then we'll have a definitive answer. But we all know which way we should be leaning, regardless of whether or not you're an optimistic or a pessimistic person by nature. You could just evaluate what situations like this are usually like with basically every single other situation of the past and realize that it's probably going to go the worst way when it comes to Cole, because that's usually how it goes with Tommy John. But we'll keep posted with that. See how the rest of spring training continues on. I know it was a decent chunk of the episode was negative today because of these injuries, but it's dominating most of it. I don't know what to really say about that, It is what it is. As much as I hate that expression, it truly is what it is. That's where we find ourselves right now. So that's the deal. You hope it improves or just doesn't get any worse than it already is. And pray for the best. What can you do? Whether it be next Sunday or the Sunday after that we yap again, it'll probably be Sunday the 23rd after having recorded on the 22nd. But even more so, if that's the case, we will obviously be right up on opening day, which is super exciting, guys, despite all of the frustrations lately. But it'll still be exciting to ring in a new season. It always is, regardless of what's going on usually with the Yankees. Always can't wait to get yet another season underway with all of you. Makes it that much more fun when we talk about it all together right here on Yapping Yankees, which, speaking of, has now reached the conclusion of its 251st episode here today. But before I go, guys, a few of the usual reminders. Remember to follow me on all social medias if you do not already. My Facebook fan page is Mike Scudero NY. My Twitter is at Mike Scudero. And my Instagram is Mike Scuds97. Subscribe to Yapping Yankees on all 4 of the platforms it is available on. That's YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Like, subscribe, comment wherever you may be listening to show your love like you always all do such a great job of doing, my friends, which I always very much appreciate. If you have the time and you missed any past Yapping Yankees episodes, you can listen to episode 1 all the way up to episode 251 here today, every single episode of Yapping Yankees on Apple, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Or if you prefer YouTube, if you're more of a YouTube listener like myself typically, then just be aware that since I only started uploading episodes on YouTube starting at episode 34, you will be able to find episodes 34 all the way up to episode 251 today on there. But once again, as always, I thank you 3,000 for listening to me yap today, my friends. I have been your host, Mike Scudero, and we shall yap again most likely in 2 weeks from today on March 23rd when I come at you with episode 252 of Yapping Yankees. But until then, guys, as always, hang in there, be patient, please stay safe, look out for your loved ones, go ahead and kick life's ass this week like I always remind you to do every single week, my friends. And speaking of be patient, I know that is a very tall order nowadays, given the current state of affairs with the Yankees and their injuries. But let's just hope that it doesn't get any worse, because the season hasn't even started yet. So, fingers crossed that we can just enjoy these next couple of weeks of exhibition baseball without any more long-term concerns. Please. Otherwise, guys, as per usual, until we yap again, take care. And let's go, Yanks.